What's up guys, it's Laura from Reading in Bed, and today I am doing the Try a Chapter tag. So the general idea of this tag is to take 5 books from your TBR, to read the first chapter, and then decide which of the books you're actually going to read in the upcoming month. It's been around since November of 2015. Malaya at Book Paradise started it. Since then, lots of people have done it. I've seen Amanda Center's video from back in April. I saw Mercy's Musings do the video in May, and just a couple days ago, Steve Donahue did his version of it, and he had a little twist on it where he just read the first page. I've got a twist on mine too, so I am going to use this tag to decide which of the Giller Prize long-listed books I'm going to read. And I wasn't necessarily going to read any of them, so this may be the only one that I read. If you don't know, that is our big book prize in Canada. The long list was just announced. And I'm going to use my Kobo because any book that has that's available on Kobo, you can download a preview, and it's usually more than the first chapter, so I didn't have to buy any books or borrow any books. I'm just going to use the e-reader. And I'm not going to read the entire long list because that would take forever. There's 12 of them. So I narrowed it down. Immediately, I was able to eliminate 5 of the books because I'm only reading women authors this year. So that eliminated 5 right off the bat. And of the 7 that were left, one of them is not released yet. That is The Wonder by Emma Donoghue. It's not out till September 20th. And I just, by the way, find that super annoying when a book gets longlisted or shortlisted and it's not even out yet. Like, why don't they just make the deadline so it's books that are actually available? Very annoying. Anyways, that leaves me with 6 books, so I'm going to do 6, and I'll tell you what they are and what I know about them, and then I'll just kind of pause, read a chapter, come back and tell you what I think, and then we'll have a verdict at the end. So the first long-listed book is 13 Ways of Looking at a Fat Girl by Mona Awad. I don't really know anything about this book. It sounds like YA though, so I wasn't super interested. The second book is The Party Wall by Catherine Leroux, translated by Lazer Lederhendler. This was the recent pick on Right Reads podcast, and I did start listening to it, but then Kurt and Tanya said, if you haven't read the book, turn the podcast off now, so who am I to argue with that? I turned it off. The third book is called The Two of Us by Kathy Pag, and I know nothing about it whatsoever. The fourth book is called Willem de Kooning's Paintbrush by Kerry Powell. Don't know anything about that one either. The fifth book is Do Not Say That We Have Nothing by Madeline Thien, and this is the one that I know the most about because I watched a review by Jason Purcell recently, and I've heard the author interviewed twice, once on the next chapter and once on the Candy Palmater show, both on CBC Radio. And it was the one I was most likely to read if I was going to pick any of them, so we'll see if that stands. And finally, The Best Kind of People by Zoe Whittall. This one seems to have a lot of buzz in Canlit circles right now, so I'm interested to find out more about it. So I'm going to jump right in, and I'm starting with 13 Ways of Looking at a Fat Girl. So I've got the first chapter queued up here, and I'll just read the very first bit and then I'll pause and come back. The first chapter is called When We Went Against the Universe. When we went against the universe at the McDonald's on the corner of Wolfdale and Mavis on a sunny afternoon. Mel and I hate sunny afternoons, especially here in Misery Saga, which is what you're allowed to call Mississauga if you live there. In Misery Saga, there's nothing to do with sunny afternoons, but all the things we've already done 1,000 times. We've lain on our backs in the grass, listening to the same Discman, one earphone each, watching the same clouds pass. All right, I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Yeah, no. 13 Ways of Looking at a Fat Girl, no, it's gonna be a no for sure. So the first bit, and actually I don't know if it was the first chapter, the preview cuts off, but of what I've read, it was these 2 teenage girls who were just kind of hanging out and then try to pick up these businessmen in a McDonald's, although, you know, they're not really going to, they're just trying to shock one another with their sexual language and whatnot, and usually I like that kind of thing, but I was so not convinced by this voice. It just didn't it wasn't a teenage voice at all. So to me, this is a no. It seems really YA-ish and just really not convincing and not my thing. So moving on. So next I'm going to try out the first bit of the party wall. So let me go back to my previews, close that, and the party wall. So I'll just take a look at the first bit and then I will pause and read further. And I think this might be a short story collection, so I don't know if the whole first story will be there, but it seems to be called Weeds. The twisting wind wraps itself around Angie's ankles, a ground-level wave that takes her by surprise. The wind, as a rule, does not linger at people's feet, except the strong, low wind produced by a passing train, as if to trip you up. She looks down to examine her shins, her knock-knees. The children, she knows, are content with being just thin, or else they are chubby, plump, fleshy. Angie is 9 years old and as gnarled as a crone. She resembles the pine trees growing on mountain tops. The shape of her fingers and toes is complicated, and her elbows protrude from the middle of her spindly arms, 2 black pearls mounted on taut wires. She dreads the day her breasts will appear, convinced as she is that they will emerge, not like the pretty apples flaunted by the girls in junior high, but like 2 angular bumps, 2 angry fists pounding their way through her chest. All right, I'll be back. Okay, so it looks like the party wall is a short story collection, and the preview actually contained the first 2 stories. The first story was super short, but I decided just to leave it at that. So it was called The Weeds, as I showed you guys, and yeah, I mean, it was so short. It was more of a fragment than a story, but I did really like the language. I liked the kind of words that were used and some of the observations. You know, there was just this kind of one-off line about there's no such thing as weeds. That's just something that a racist gardener came up with. I like that. So while I'm not really sure what some of the other stories are going to be like, presumably some will be longer and be more plot driven, but I do like the way it's written. So this one's a maybe so far. So we'll see how we do with the others. And next up is going to be The Two of Us by Kathy Pag, and I think this might also be a collection. We'll see. I'll just go into the preview. Yeah, it looks like it is a collection. We've got a table of contents here. The first story is called The House on Manor Close. So I'll just read the first bit. Loganberries. We ate from pale green plates on an oval table in a square dining room adjoining the kitchen and linked to it by a sliding door. The French windows that led from the dining room to the garden were often steamed up, blurring the view. A shaded lamp suspended above the table rose and fell smoothly when you pushed or pulled the little handle beneath the bulb. My father's seat at the head of the table faced the back garden, its lawns, trees, and banks of flowering shrubs so bright in the summer that they almost hurt your eyes. And I'll be back in a minute. Okay, I'm back, and well, this preview cut off in the middle of either the first chapter or the first story. I'm still not really sure. I kind of hope it's a novel because I really like this first bit, whereas 13 Ways of Looking at a Fat Girl seems to probably have some themes around food and, you know, dieting and eating and stuff. This one does too, or at least the first bit did, and it was just written a lot more interestingly than 13 Ways of Looking at a Fat Girl. It was mother and daughter kind of struggling. The mom is like really weird about food. She insists that everyone have something different for supper rather than all eating the same meal, and she's like vindictive about it. Like if she's mad at you, she'll give you something that you hate, and it's just like really bizarre kind of disordered behavior. The daughter sounds like she develops an eating disorder, and it's just like this constant battle of wills at the dinner table. So that was all I got to read, and it was good though. I liked how it was written. I'm gonna try and find out whether it's stories or a novel, and that might influence my choice. But in the meantime, I'll close that one, and I'm going to move on to Willem de Kooning's Paintbrush by Kerry Powell, which is another one that I know absolutely nothing about. So I'm into the preview. Another one with a page of, or a table of contents. I think this one is stories, and the first one is called In a Kingdom Beneath the Sea. I'll read the first bit. Today's the day Mitchell Burnhope gets the royal shit kicked out of him. That's the consensus at the bar. Marie Odille's bear-shaped brothers are already brooding in the rear, chowing down on a late breakfast of corn dogs and slush puppies from the Texaco across the road. Every few minutes, one of them looks up at the door with his unibrow beetled. I'm still shocked at how many girls allow their own flesh and blood inside this place to watch them grind it out on stage. We had one a few years ago who went everywhere with her little blue-haired grandma until Frank had to kick her to the curb for fencing stolen goods from her jumbo-sized handbag. All right, I'll be back. Well, this was another short preview, so I didn't even get to finish the first story, but it was about a stripper who works in a rundown club that's in a rundown hotel, and she seems like she's kind of on her way out. She's maybe a little older, and the story's more about some of the younger girls, and it's all very seedy, and you could probably tell from the bit I read, like, what the language is like. So it's interesting, but yeah, I'm not sure about this one. This one's probably a no. So I'm going to move on. Now, the last two I know are novels. And first up is Do Not Say That We Have Nothing by Madeline Thien. So I'll just get to that preview. And read out the first bit. Okay. In a single year, my father left us twice. The first time to end his marriage, and the second when he took his own life. That year, 1989, my mother flew to Hong Kong and laid my father to rest in a cemetery near the Chinese border. Afterwards, distraught, she rushed home to Vancouver where I had been alone. I was 10 years old. Here's what I remember. I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so this is a longer preview, and I didn't actually finish the whole first chapter because it seems like it's quite long, but there are like some stops, like there's kind of a dash at the end of this paragraph, so I stopped here. The first bit didn't really pull me in. Like, I already know it's about a girl whose father goes back to China during the 1989 Tiananmen Square protests, and he supposedly, or maybe really does commit suicide, and he was a classical pianist, and music is kind of a big theme, and it's already shown that in the first couple pages. So, like, it's interesting, and the writing is good, but it didn't really pull me in, and I've heard that from some people, that it takes a while to get into this book, and so, yeah, I don't know if I'm really into something like that right now. But we have one more book to try, and that is The Best Kind of People by Zoe Whittall. So I'm going to go back to the previews, and we'll get into this one, and then I'm going to make my choice. Very exciting, isn't it? So, just get into this here. Okay, so, there's a prologue, so I guess I'll start with that. Almost a decade earlier, a man with a 45-70 Marlin hunting rifle walked through the front doors of Avalon Hills Prep School. He didn't know that he was about to become a living symbol of the age of white men shooting into crowds. He hadn't slept in 4 days. He was the kind of angry that only made sense outside of language. He had walked 3 miles from his new bachelor apartment above Harry's Cottage Times bait shop, oblivious to the downpour, the thin rip along the seam of his right leather boot. Soaked, unaware. He walked, a head without a body, a head with one single thought, looped and distorted. Students attending all 12 grades were amassed in classrooms, a blur of uniform plaid, settling in after the first bell. Except for Sadie Woodbury. She was standing in front of an open locker, retrieving her lucky koala bear eraser and straightening her thick brown bangs in a heart-shaped, magnetized mirror. The sparkling unicorn sticker at the apex of the heart was beginning to peel away from the plastic glass. It was class speech day in 5th grade. I'll be back in a minute. Okay, as I knock the camera over, I just finished the prologue of The Best Kind of People, and I'm just going to leave it at the prologue, I think, because it was long enough to get a sense. And, well, without further ado, it's the winner. I kind of knew the premise that it's about a man who just seems totally ordinary and gets accused of something awful. It seemed like probably molesting a child or something like that. It's not really specified in the prologue, but he's accused of something terrible, and it's about his family and his daughter in particular. It seems like having to come to grips with that. Yeah, the prologue was awesome. Of all these books, it was the only one where I was like, pressing on the Kobo. There's always a delay. You can't turn the page quite as quickly as you'd like to, and that was the only one where that was an issue. So, yeah, that's the winner. The Best Kind of People by Zoe Whittall. I'm going to buy it with my birthday money. I'm going to read it. And now I get to watch Jason Purcell's review of it as well. So if you've done this tag, let me know. If you're going to read some of the Giller Prize long list, let me know. If you want to check out some of these books, you can do what I did and look at a preview, but you can also read excerpts on the Giller Prize's website of the entire long list. I'd love to hear what people think. I'd love to hear what you think of the other books that were written by male authors. Some of them look really good too. And that's it. The short list is going to be announced on September 26th, and we'll see what happens from there. Thanks for watching.